Well, this video is basically going to be covering the Norman Conquest of England, and at this time it is only England, not the UK. So it's going to be the Norman Conquest of England. Of course, the Norwegians come, the Vikings, and the Normans, who are in this area of France. Well, we're going to start with the Normans, of course, and they're led by William. We're just going to write W, right? William is from Normandy. He is the Duke of Normandy. And we've got up here, we're going to put, for make it easier because there's going to be two Harolds, we have Harold Hardrada, HH. Okay, so the King of England in 1066, this is when it's of course happening, 1066 is Edward the Confessor, who's very pious, very religious. He dies and leaves no obvious heir to the throne because he was very much a weak king, you could argue, because he was easily persuaded by other people. And the person that wanted to take over there were three people at first. Okay, we have William of Normandy, because he was he was a relative of the king. And of course up here we have Harold Hardrada, who wanted to return to have a Viking ruler back in England, which they had before under King Canute. So Harold wanted to restore that. But there was also another Harold, who was Earl of the earldom down here, which was Wessex. So we have Harold, we're just going to put a H for that. Okay, so you've got Harold Hardrada, and his name's Harold Godwinson, so we'll put HG. Harold Godwinson, and you've got William, his name was William the Bastard because he was born illegitimately. That was his name, but that changed to William the Conqueror. So Harold Godwinson is down here. He becomes king, so he is now the new king of England after the death of Edward. William said that Edward promised him the throne when he dies. However, also Harold said that as well. He said that he promised it to him on his deathbed. So Harold is now king. Okay. Then William finds out about the fact that Harold has become king, and they expect he's going to launch an invasion onto the south coast of England. So Harold gets all his troops to line up and defend the south coast, right? Because he's expecting an imminent invasion. And Harold Hardrada, unknown to them as well, is planning the same thing. Right? He's planning to come over and try and take what he thinks should be Viking. So after waiting here for a long time, there seems to be no invasion. And eventually the soldiers return to where they're from to collect the harvest. That leaves the south coast exposed. But William doesn't invade because of the wind. The wind isn't favouring him, and this will be a big part of what you could say is luck, because the wind prevents him from crossing. So then the first people to arrive are actually the Normans, who arrive not too far away from York in 1066, and they set up base in York, and then they end out fighting against sort of the earls up here. So you had Edwin and you have Morcar. Those were the two. Well, I suppose more of earls than thanes, but I'm not sure if they were thanes. I think they were earls. They were earls of the local earldoms and shires. So them two fought against Harold Hardrada in the Battle of Fulford. Okay, this is not too far from York. The Battle of Fulford, which the Norwegians, we're going to refer to them as Norwegians, but they are also the Vikings. The Vikings win the first battle of Fulford Gate. Of course, Harold is still down here in London area. He sends all his troops to go fight the Vikings up here, which of course is Harold Hardrada now versus Harold Godwinson. Harold Godwinson is Anglo-Saxon English. Harold Hardrada is Viking. Harold Hardrada has just beaten the nobles, the Edwin and Morcar, the small Anglo-Saxon army up north, the Northern Army, I suppose you could call them, but not the main army with the king. So they've just won there. But Edwin and Morcar are still alive. They haven't been killed. And fighting alongside Harold Hardrada up here is Tostig, who was the brother of Harold Godwinson. So he's kind of gone back to, because Harold Godwinson, his father was Godwin. They had Norwegian roots, of course, because before this, England was Norwegian and Viking ruled by King Canute, as I said earlier. So now they meet in a place called Stamford Bridge, which is a little bit further south of Fulford Gate. So Stamford Bridge is down a little bit further. It's near York area, up north. And the Vikings are caught on surprise. They have no armour, because they just have their swords. That's really it. And the Normans, of course, Normans down here, but the Vikings are up here, and up comes the Anglo-Saxons. And in this battle, the current king of England is the winner. So that was, of course, Anglo-Saxons. Harold Godwinson, we'll put another HG, versus Harold Hardrada. Those two are fighting in the second battle of Stamford Bridge. And the winner is Harold Godwinson. The Vikings are killed, including Harold Hardrada. He dies. So you can remember that Harold Hardrada is killed in the Battle of Stamford Bridge. He ended up getting killed. And so does Tostig. Tostig also dies. But some of them, the son of Harold Hardrada is spared, and he is said to go back to Norway and to never return to England. So the Norwegians are sent straight back, and of course Harold Hardrada is killed. So their invasion is gone. But during this time, of course, back to the Normans have arrived in Pevensey Bay. Pevensey, I think it's in West Sussex. They've just arrived, and they have gone around the south coast, burning down villages all across here. And of course, he's still up here. And he's doing this to try and get him to come down south. Of course, Harold Godwinson to come straight back down south. Of course, Harold Godwinson is annoyed with what's happened. And he comes straight back down. And what the problem is, he doesn't go to London. He decides to go straight down to where they meet at Senlac Hill. They meet at Senlac Hill, which is in Hastings, just about here. So they've met, and of course he's on top of the hill. So if you imagine, he's on the Anglo-Saxons are on the top of the hill, the Normans are on the bottom. But of course they've got the advantage then. And of course they're using a shield wall, which is just a long line of people with their shields locked together. Of course they can't break through it. So eventually, once they find out that they can't seem to break through it, at first they think it's a real retreat. The attacking Normans kind of retreat back, but the inexperienced members of the army break from the shield wall, which is, remember, it's just a long line of shields that are locked together. They've broken out of it, and they've come rushing forward. So if this pen is the Anglo-Saxons, they've come forward. The shield wall was back here, so they're open shield wall to the whole of the rest of the army. And it's all Normans just around here. Normans will come back, sweep round them, and then kill off them there, and then they can keep doing that. More and more coming forward. Eventually the shield wall is getting broken, and eventually they're both on the bottom of the hill. So the purpose of the advantage of being on top is gone. They're both on level ground on the bottom of the hill at Senlac Hill. So then they're on equal ground, and then it's basically they've lost their advantage of being on top of the hill. And now this is one thing you can put for good leadership of William. William says to his troops, fire your arrows high into the air to come landing down on the heads of the Anglo-Saxons. And that is what happens. He sends them straight up into the air, and that is what they said is what killed Harold Godwinson. They say Harold Godwinson got shot in the eye with an arrow from William. So then that is what you can say as part of the Battle of Hastings. It's simple as that. They've come down. I think it's about 7,000. They're evenly matched soldiers. There weren't too much difference in how many men. But another key part of the Normans is that they had cavalry, which what the Anglo-Saxons didn't have. So the Normans had cavalry. Of course, they had horses, and they had a proper archery division, which the Anglo-Saxons also didn't have. Of course, they had archers, but not at the lengths of the Normans. So then they were up to, of course, they shot their arrows, and they said they've killed Harold Godwinson. So Harold Godwinson is dead. at that point. But after that, then the ending of the battle, the housecarls or thanes are said to have stayed there and kept fighting until the death. And the third, which are the peasant army of just normal people, churls, thralls, they end up fleeing, most of them, go back to where they were from, back in the middle of the country, up north, wherever they were from. And of course the king is dead. But William doesn't instantly become king. They give it to Edgar Atheling, who is, I think is one of the closer relatives of Edward the Confessor. But eventually William does become king. And William is actually crowned king on Christmas Day on 1066 in London, in Westminster, I believe. So then William is now the king. We can explain more of how he retained the power of king in the next video, which I'll be doing maybe in a few days. So just to summarise, Normans are from France. The Anglo-Saxons, of course, led by Harold Godwinson, and then the Vikings, Norwegians, you can call them, I suppose, Harold Hardrada. Of course, he is stopped coming over because of the wind. That's William. Harold Hardrada does come over. He easily beats the He easily beats the local earls and local northern army, led by Edwin and Morcar, who are landowners, and I'm not sure if you can call them thanes, but they are very much landowners and skilled fighters. I suppose you could call them thanes. They did similar things to the thanes, what the thanes could do. So them two, they are defeated down there, although they are still alive. Don't forget that. They actually get more. They will be more important in the future, Edwin and Morcar. Then Harold Godwinson comes straight back up. He defeats Hardrada. William comes. He comes straight back down. Makes a mistake not going back to London, and he is killed there. And then eventually William becomes king, and we'll talk about how he retained his power in the next episode of the Norman invasion and keeping England as a Norman colony.